Welcome, friends. My name is Alan Levine, and I'm privileged to serve as chair of the board of the Jewish Theological Seminary. On behalf of the board, the administration, and the faculty, I'm delighted to welcome you to this special convocation. Today's conferral of honorary degrees represents a milestone in the careers of our honorees. These rabbis are devoted to our traditions and our people. Individually and as part of our movement and communities, they have helped meet the religious needs of today's Jews, and they prepare the way for a flourishing Jewish future for all of us. The broad and deep impact of these rabbis is reflected in today's audience. Joining us online are not only proud family members and friends, but lay leaders, professional colleagues, and members of the congregations and organizations served by our honorees. We're living through trying times for the world and the Jewish community. The coronavirus has affected each of us, upending our lives, routines, and expectations, and bringing real pain and loss for so many. The familiar rhythms of Jewish life and community have been severely disrupted. The rabbis we honor today have been on the spiritual front lines of this crisis, tending to grieving individuals and disoriented communities, even as they go through their own struggles in response to the pandemic. They have shown amazing creativity and resilience, finding new ways to connect and to inspire, and the Jewish community is in their debt. Against the backdrop of this difficult time, and with a sense that there is now a light at the end of the tunnel, we come together today, physically distant but spiritually connected, to celebrate our honorees' achievements. Thank you so much for joining us to honor these rabbis, and to our honorees, Mazel Tov, on your innumerable accomplishments and your profound and lasting impact on the Jewish world. Thank you.
What an honor it is, as President of the Rabbinical Assembly, to share greetings on behalf of our rabbinic organization. Just a couple of years ago, I was sitting where you are to receive this honorary doctorate from JTS. Well, I guess I wasn't sitting in front of a video monitor. So many people express admiration for this accomplishment, and yet many of us associate this honor with survival rather than achievement. Many years ago, we were ordained as rabbis. We became part of that sacred chain described in Pirkei Avot that began with Moshe and continues unto this day. To be a rabbi means to live a life dedicated to the values from the texts that we've studied throughout our lives. Like Hillel's well-known teaching to be like disciples of Aaron, Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom, Ohev et Habriotim, or Karvan Torah, to love peace, pursue peace, love all humanity, and draw them closer to Torah. And whatever type of rabbinate you have been involved in, and even how you've lived your private lives during these more than 25 years, you were teachers of our tradition. In your everyday interactions, you were rabbis whose knowledge directed you to inspire others with the words of the Torah, Kedoshim Tihiyu. You all have brought holiness to the Jewish people and to the world. The Rabbinical Assembly is proud of your accomplishments, proud to call you colleagues, and proud of the honor bestowed upon you today.
Navol Tibol, you are going to wear yourself out. With these bracing words, Yitro warns his talented son-in-law Moshe that he must recruit leaders to serve as wise judges of the people. Yitro has observed Moshe and his remarkable work ethic, but if Moshe is going to survive, and if his people are going to thrive, then the burden of leadership must be shared. Still, it is a strange expression, Navol Tibol. Onkelos translates it into Aramaic as Mil'ah Til'eh. You will surely wear yourself out, which is also followed in English by JTS. But the word Naval could refer to confusion, Bilbul, as Rashbam reads it. He says that if Moshe tries to respond to many people at once, his voice will become confused and no one will understand him. Recruit fellow judges to share the burden, and then everyone will understand. We might say that the 70 elders were like Chevruta, study partners, because even Moshe needs others to learn with. Naval can also mean foolish, the opposite of Chacham or wise, as we read in Ha'azinu, Am Naval velo Chacham, a people who are foolish and not wise. Both Midrash Sifrei Devarim explains the phrase thus: Am naval velo chacham, naval l'sha'avar, velo chacham la'atid lavo. The people, as described in Ha'azinu, were foolish both backwards and forwards. They didn't understand their past, nor did they anticipate their future. Ramban expands on this meaning, and he says there that they forgot what they had learned and couldn't see what was coming. If we read Yitro in light of Ha'azinu, then Yitro's advice to Moshe is not only about sharing the burden. Rather, by recruiting qualified leaders, by raising up students of Torah, he will have the opportunity to continue teaching, to retain and deepen his own wisdom. Sharing Torah with others is a way to keep your learning fresh, and in the give and take with students, to uncover new layers of meaning, to discern the relevance of Torah for whatever is coming next. I share these thoughts with you, my colleagues and friends, our teachers and rabbis, because teaching Torah is the very essence of rabbinic leadership. It is what you have been doing since being ordained, and as you know, Kihem Chayenu v'Orech Yamenu, these precious experiences of teaching Torah are the source of our vitality, the key to our longevity and relevance as rabbis. This convocation is a rare opportunity for us to thank you and bless you, Rabbanim Nichbadim, our great teachers of Torah, you who have been a source of blessing to so many others. Looking forward, I encourage each of you to continue to study and to teach, Lilmod Ulamed, so that you can retain what you have learned and uncover new facets of the Torah. As Yitro says to Moshe, if you do this, then you will continue to stand strong, v'yachalta amod, to discern the divine command and to lead our people in peace wherever they need to go. Mazal Tov to you and your families and to your students. May you all be blessed with good health, with continued success, and with joy in your holy work.
I still remember when my father received his honorary doctorate in a ceremony that took place at the Concord Hotel during an annual Rabbinical Assembly convention. Ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1953, he and his cohort were among the many rabbis who brought Judaism, and particularly conservative Judaism, to Jews hungry for connection and meaning after the trauma of the Second World War. Like my father on Long Island, most rabbis in that era were what we would now call entrepreneurs, leading fledgling startups that grew into thriving, vibrant centers of Jewish worship, learning, and community. He never aspired to a doctorate, but this degree that honored the ministry that animated his days and nights for decades meant the world to him. Today, we honor you for your achievements over the past 25 years as rabbis, teachers, and preachers in Israel. In the years since my father's generation, Jewish life has grown more sophisticated and the religious hunger of our people more varied. Your rabbinates have evolved to meet their needs in many different settings. Through your writing, teaching, scholarship, pastoral counseling, relationship building, spiritual formation, institution building, and more, you, individually, through your distinctive career path, and you, collectively, have magnified Torah in the broadest sense, transforming Jewish life and Jewish lives for the better. The significance of your work is epitomized to me by the phrase in Talmud Bavli, Bava Batra 9a, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Gadol hame'aseh yoter min ha'oseh. Rabbi Elazar said, one who causes others to do is greater than one who does. The discussion from which this is drawn focused on tzedakah, the value of caring not only for yourself, but also using your bounty to improve the lives of others. The proof comes from Isaiah chapter 32, verse 17, where ma'aseh, the same letters as me'aseh, is associated with righteousness. V'haya ma'aseh hatzedakah shalom, v'avodat hatzedakah hashket v'vetach ad olam. And the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness calm and confidence forever. The focus on the greatness of the me'aseh feels particularly appropriate here. You have each achieved so much, but the true measure of your greatness lies in your impact on others. giving others the tools, inspiration, skills, confidence, and communities to lead more richly Jewish lives. As we celebrate your careers today, you bring great honor to JTS for the ways in which you walk in the world as Jewish leaders. We live in challenging times, symbolized most dramatically by the fact that this event is a virtual one, when we so hoped to be able to host you on our gorgeous new campus. But you know only too well that every moment has its challenges, and the importance of religious leadership is always essential. Chizku v'imtzu, we wish you strength and fortitude, and many more years of sipuk nefesh, of deep satisfaction, as you continue to pursue your sacred work. We now turn to the conferring of the honorary degrees, which gives us the opportunity to publicly acclaim the long and distinguished careers of a select group of rabbis who have left their mark on their communities. These honorary degrees have been approved by the JTS Board of Trustees. The rabbis we honor today serve the conservative movement and the larger Jewish community in a broad array of capacities. Among our honorees are congregational rabbis, Jewish educators, hospital, military, and prison chaplains, pastoral counselors, Jewish communal executives, academicians, authors, volunteer leaders of organizations, and activists in interfaith dialogue and social justice. As the intellectual and spiritual center of conservative Judaism, JTS is proud to honor these outstanding rabbis who were ordained at JTS and several other fine institutions. I want to make special mention of one honoree, Rabbi Jonathan Perlman, who is a survivor of the horrific massacre at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018. Rabbi Perlman is spiritual leader of New Light Congregation, which at the time was one of 3 congregations sharing space at Tree of Life. We continue to mourn the victims of that tragedy who lost their lives simply for going to synagogue that Shabbat morning. And we are grateful that Rabbi Perlman is joining us today. We also sadly honor the memory of 2 members of the JTS Rabbinical School classes being recognized today. Rabbi Carla Theodore, Zichrona Livracha, was ordained in 1992 and died in 2013. Rabbi Marilyn Werman, Zichrona Livracha, was ordained in 1993 and died in 2020. Both were dedicated rabbis who served with great devotion, bringing people closer to Judaism through their teaching, celebrating with people in times of joy, and supporting them in their sorrows. May their memories be a blessing for all those whose lives they touched. Our honorees have devoted their careers to making Judaism a vital force in people's lives and to bringing its wisdom to bear on the challenges of modernity. Each has brought unique abilities and commitments to the sacred task of serving the Jewish community. Rabbi Daniel Nevins and Rabbi Julia Andelman, Director of Community Engagement at JTS, will now briefly introduce each honorary degree candidate who will join them on screen.
Rabbi Reuben Israel Abraham, you have served 3 different Northeast Philadelphia conservative synagogues during your almost 34 years in the rabbinate. You served as the rabbi chaplain of a major Catholic health system for 27 years, working in acute care, elder care, hospice care, and palliative care. You are a military retiree, having served in the United States Navy for 25 years. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Bernard Richard Barsky, spiritual leader of 3 congregations over 20 years, you continue serving the Jewish and general communities pastorally as a mental health counselor, prison chaplain, spokesman for ex-offender re-entry, and chair of a citizens committee investigating conditions in the county jail. You are guided by the words of Jacob, for to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Lawrence Joel Bazer, you have proudly served 2 congregations and the United States military. As a pulpit rabbi, you designed and led innovative programming, prayer experiences, and life-changing trips to Israel and Eastern Europe. As a military chaplain and colonel, now on active duty, you are an Or LaGoyim, a light unto the nations, proudly bringing Torah and Jewish values to all in uniform. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Gordon Burnett Cunin. Since ordination, you have served as rabbinic head of school and director of the Beit Midrash Fellowship at the Milken Community School in Los Angeles. You have worked on educational visioning, curricular integration, translating scholarship into practice, and grassroots community building. You have relished the blessings of collaboration and the joy and responsibility of Torah. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Leonardo A. Bitran, you have served 3 congregations across the United States. At your current synagogue, Temple Beth El in Rochester, New York, you have ushered in an era of radical inclusion by conducting same-gender weddings and revitalizing services and the religious school to better welcome special needs congregants. Over the years, 8 of your B'nai Mitzvah students have gone on to become rabbis. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Greta Bernard Brown, you were an educator and administrator at the LaFell School in Westchester, New York, and the Solomon Schechter Day School of Bergen County, New Jersey. You've developed innovative formal curricula for day and religious schools. You have volunteered extensively at your former synagogue, Beth El Synagogue Center in New Rochelle, New York. Officiating at life cycle events of family and friends has been a highlight for you. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Richard Preston Camras, you have been spiritual leader of Shomrei Torah Synagogue in West Hills, California for 21 years. Previously, you served as associate rabbi at Chizuk Emunah congregation in Baltimore. Teaching practical rabbinics for 20 years at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies and founding the Conejo West Valley Melton School, you have focused with passion on the area of Jewish education. Mazal Tov.
Rabbi Barry John Chesler, your desire to learn and teach has been in evidence throughout your career as congregational rabbi at the Malvern Jewish Center in New York and as teacher and department coordinator at Schechter School of Long Island High School. You taught for over 10 years at JTS's Prosdor High School on Long Island and at JTS, and nearly 20 years at Camp Ramah in the Berkshires. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Diane Aronson Cohen, you are a teacher and a writer. You've taught God and Torah to congregations on both sides of the country. You've published chapters on ritual and prayer in several publications and contributed to Chumash Eitz Chaim. Your book, Making Shabbat a Beginner's Guide, is an outgrowth of your work with conversion candidates and the Rabbinical Assembly Beit Din. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Deborah A. Eisenman, you have been a master instructor of the Florence Melton School of Jewish Learning since 2008, previously serving both as a pulpit rabbi and a hospice chaplain. You are dedicated to bringing your students a truly interactive learning experience and providing them with dynamic insights into sacred text. From your students, you have learned that Jewish textual study can be deeply spiritually enlightening. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Alexander Evan Chaim, you are a scholar with master's degrees from JTS and Hebrew University and a PhD from Hebrew University, and long served as a professor at the Schechter Institute in Jerusalem. You are a man of deeds. For a decade, you were an academic dean of the Schechter Institute, but what defines you most is your devotion to your students and your love of teaching. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Raphael Yitzchak Friedman, you served as rabbi of Kehilat HaKerem in Carmiel, Israel, and at the Emmanuel Synagogue in West Hartford, Connecticut. You taught rabbinics and Tanakh at the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School in Rockville, Maryland, and have been an educator for youth with special needs. You participated in interfaith learning in the United States and Israel. You have been deeply committed to Klal Yisrael and to caring for people. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Shoshana Boyd Gelfand, you have brought Jewish wisdom to the public square in diverse ways as a BBC radio broadcaster, children's author, leadership coach, philanthropic advisor, Christian seminary faculty member, and chief executive of Jewish charities. But it is your work in the interfaith field, building relationships between Muslims, Jews, and Christians, that has been at the heart of your rabbinic calling. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Nechama D. Goldberg, you served as rabbi of Temple Am David in Warwick, Rhode Island. In Greater Boston, you've been Director of Administration and Finance at Hebrew College, Jewish chaplain at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Director of Operations and Finance at the JTS in Newton, and member of Congregation Kehilat Israel in Brookline. Throughout, you've enriched many lives by holding hands and hearts through teaching, counseling, prayer, and pastoral care. Mazal Tov.
Rabbi Simon Hirschhorn. As a rabbi and psychoanalyst, you consider it a privilege to be invited to share people's journeys through life and death. You served for more than 24 years as the rabbi at the Hebrew Home at Riverdale in New York. With your warm, accessible personality, you established deeply supportive relationships with the residents. One, a Holocaust survivor, once told you, "You're just a regular guy who happens to be a rabbi." Mazal Tov. Rabbi Robert Kahn. You served Bethel Synagogue in Minneapolis for 16 years. You have accomplished your lifelong dream of making Aliyah and establishing a home in Yerushalayim. As a serious Jew and educator who has excelled in informal education, you have shared your passion for life, Judaism, and Israel with young people and adults from all over the world. Mazal Tov. Rabbi David Callender. In your 20s, you realized that you wanted to dedicate your life to helping people find the joy, comfort, and inspiration that comes from a traditional and contemporary Jewish framework. With kavod, respect and honor for the individual, our tradition, and God, your approach has been to journey with people on their paths of personal and communal sacred growth. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Raphael Joshua Cantor. You have served Tiferet Israel Congregation in New Bedford, Massachusetts since 1997, emphasizing serious Jewish study and prayer and a commitment to Tikkun Olam. You've been honored in the greater community for distinguished service in ecumenical ministry. Stemming from your commitment to prison reform and criminal justice, you have been a volunteer rabbinical chaplain at the Bristol County House of Corrections for over 25 years. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Amy Walk-Katz. You have served synagogues in Lansing, Michigan, and Overland Park, Kansas, and currently are the rabbi of Temple Bethel in Springfield, Massachusetts. In each, you prioritized Jewish learning and were a liturgical innovator and trusted pastoral resource. You oversaw the merger of 2 conservative synagogues and a sanctuary renovation. In your love of Torah and Israel, you lead by example. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Yosef Kleiner. You have served as spiritual leader of congregations in Argentina, Chile, France, and Israel. In your teaching, you have always tried to convey a different, fresher, and surprising point of view on topics usually thought to be commonplace. This approach is also reflected in your publications. Coherence and respect are the signs of your teachings and deeds. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Manis Kogan. You have served congregations in Argentina, the Dominican Republic, and the United States, and have made a difference in your congregants' lives. You believe that teaching Torah, leading services, and living a life of kindness are not solely within the purview of synagogue professionals, and you have empowered your congregants to become Torah teachers, prayer leaders, and spreaders of chesed in the community. Mazal tov. Rabbi J. Mark Kornskold. You have been rabbi of Bethel Synagogue in East Windsor, New Jersey since 1994. You also serve as treasurer of the Rabbinical Assembly, acting secretary of Merkaz Olami, and on the New Jersey State Cemetery Board, among other communal endeavors. You are regarded for your caring and compassionate nature and for your commitment to social justice and to the state of Israel. Mazal tov.
Rabbi Gail Susan Leibovitz, you earned your doctorate in Talmud and Rabbinics at JTS in 2002, and since 2003, you've helped guide many new colleagues into the rabbinate as a member of the faculty of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies. Author of the book Marriage and Metaphor, as well as numerous articles, you've had 2 teshuvot adopted by the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards. Mazal tov. Rabbi David James Lazar, throughout your career in Israel, Sweden, and the United States, you have worked diligently towards LGBTQ inclusion and interfaith dialogue. As director of RIKMA, you helped train a generation of Masorti rabbis in Israel. Today, you lead Or Hamidbar in Palm Springs, California, focusing on a spiritual Jewish approach to prayer, study, and social justice. Mazal tov. Rabbi Judd Kruger Levingston, as principal of Prosdor at JTS in the 1990s, and since 2009 as Director of Jewish Studies at James M. Barrack Jewish Academy in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, you have been affectionately called Rabbi Lev by your students as their teacher and club advisor. With your PhD from JTS, you've pursued research and writing in articles and in a book about character education and play. Mazal tov. Rabbi Lynn Cheryl Liberman, you created and launched the Jewish Community Chaplaincy Program of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area 6 years ago to reach marginalized, unaffiliated, isolated Jews. You find the spark, the Pintele Yid, within souls, renewing Jewish meaning and connection in people's lives. You teach Judaism by drawing on its deepest universal lessons as a chaplain for hospice patients and others affected by medical trauma. Mazal tov. Rabbi Jonathan Lipnick, you have made a lifelong commitment to Jewish education. Your rabbinate is about listening to your students while creating learning environments that cultivate curiosity and meaning. You are forever challenged by living a prayerful life, and you invite fellow minyan makers to examine how we together can create a more just, compassionate, and peaceful world. Mazal tov. Rabbi Leonard Zev Mirov, after serving as a pulpit rabbi for 15 years, you've served as a hospice and hospital chaplain since 2007. At present, you serve as the rabbi of the State Psychiatric Hospital in Atascadero, California. You've emphasized empathy and holy living through your chaplaincy, social justice work, and teaching. You lead volunteer efforts to aid the hungry and unhoused. Mazal tov. Rabbi Ron Murov, you are a tireless and compassionate pastor, teacher, and leader for members of Chizuk Emunah and the broader Harrisburg, Pennsylvania community. Since 1993, you and your shul have overcome many challenges, including a devastating fire, by inspiring congregants to tap into their deepest Jewish values and yearnings. You bring people together, including through a collection of Divrei Torah, the fire within us. Mazal tov. Rabbi Hillel A. Nori, you have taught Talmud at JTS and have led and revitalized congregations, both large and small, in New York City, Atlanta, Gulfport, and Chattanooga. You've been a rabbi in residence at 4 Ramah camps and a prison chaplain. As a Taekwondo black belt, 3rd degree, you've combined Jewish spiritual practice with martial arts philosophy. Mazal tov.
Rabbi Harris Jonathan Perlman. Named one of America's most inspiring rabbis by The Forward, You have drawn people to worship with interesting drashot and by lending your resonant voice to prayers. You have sat at the bedside of the suffering as a compassionate certified chaplain, expanded adult education at 2 JCCs, and engaged in interfaith conversations, especially with Black churches. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Reuben Saperstein. You have been the rabbi of several Buenos Aires congregations. You've taught Jewish history for many years at the Ort School in Buenos Aires. You've been responsible for the teaching and conversion process of hundreds of Jews in the city of Iquitos in Peru, as well as in other cities in South America. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Elaine Sharon Landau Schnee. The rabbinate is your third career after teaching and raising 4 children. Your journey began when you accepted your first aliyah as your son became a bar mitzvah. After ordination, you served as a Judaic studies principal and then held pulpit positions in Dalton, Georgia, Richmond, and Las Vegas. You were an early role model for women joining the rabbinate. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Benjamin Stephen Sendro. In your 28-year career, you have served only 2 congregations, currently Congregation Shari Tefillah in Carmel, Indiana. Teaching Jewish values is a strong component of your rabbinate. You fulfilled the sad duty of praying for the victims of the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh at the request of the President of the United States. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Albert Isaac Slomovitz. Upon ordination, you joined the U.S. Navy as a chaplain. Your admirable career included a tour as the second rabbi ever assigned to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. You earned a PhD in American history from Loyola University in Chicago and are the author of 3 books. You founded the Jewish Christian Discovery Center, which is devoted to reducing anti-Semitism and increasing interfaith awareness. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Palti Summerstein. You have been the rabbi of synagogues in Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, and Mexico, imbuing your service with a deep commitment to spirituality, social justice, and interfaith dialogue. You were co-author and advocate of the anti-discrimination law in Bolivia. Your rabbinical practice and love of Judaism encouraged and inspired you to grow in your new career as a psychotherapist and earn a doctorate in human development. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Michal Batsheva Springer. You founded the groundbreaking Center for Pastoral Education at JTS and passionately directed it for a decade after having served as Associate Dean and Director of Field Education in the Rabbinical School. You became Manager of Clinical Pastoral Education at New York Presbyterian Hospital in time to serve on the front lines during the COVID-19 pandemic, providing essential leadership and care to patients, students, and staff. Mazal Tov.
Rabbi Howard Adams Stecker. You led 3 pulpits since ordination, serving as Senior Rabbi of Temple Israel of Great Neck, New York since 2003. You worked to elevate and celebrate multiple aspects of Temple Israel's diversity, including the Ashkenazi and Mizrahi traditions of its membership. You helped guide the establishment of the Solomon Schechter High School of Long Island and taught numerous summers at Camp Ramah. Mazal Tov. Rabbi J. Michael Stein, Senior Rabbi of Greenberg Hebrew Center in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Since 2012, you have expanded the breadth and depth of the synagogue's adult education and other programming, and developed a cadre of engaged lay leaders. Adjunct professor at Mercy College, you also authored Found in Thought, a novel. You served on the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards and is president of the Philadelphia Board of Rabbis. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Valerie Stesson, you are a pioneering leader in the developing field of spiritual care in Israel, director and co-founder of Kashuvot. You teach Israeli spiritual caregivers and implement this culture in healthcare settings. You created and implemented innovative educational programs in the Tali Schools Network and in the former Soviet Union. You are the first woman ordained by the Schechter Institute and the Masorti movement in Israel. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Ariel Akiva Staffenmacher, you have led the Seminario Rabbinico Latinoamericano for the last 10 years, transforming it, expanding its vision, and reaching hundreds of thousands. Your volunteer work for the Masorti movement has been crucial for the growth of Merkaz, Noam, and Masorti in Latin America. A member of the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, you forged a strong partnership between the Seminario and the Rabbinical Assembly. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Lauren A. Sykes, you have been an innovator in establishing Kihilot Kedoshot, sacred communities that have transformed thousands of lives. From Ramah Darom to Camp Yofi, a Jewish camp for Jewish families and children with autism, to the Rose Crown Minyan at Anshe Emet, you have invested in youth and families, inspiring them to explore and live Torah and grow in mitzvot and maasim tovim, good deeds. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Michael N. Unger, you have served as rabbi in St. Louis, Montclair, New Jersey, and Toledo, Columbus, and Cleveland, Ohio. Your focus has always been on serving your community, working with fellow leaders of different faiths and backgrounds to improve your corner of the world. Your commitment to spiritual and physical well-being guides you as you enter a new chapter in your rabbinic career. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Elise Winnick, your rabbinate has been focused on facilitating journeys of identity and the acquisition of tools for developing Jewish independence and Jewish community, doing so at Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston, M2, the Institute for Experiential Jewish Education, Brandeis University, and Koach, the Center for Conservative Judaism on campus. A mentor and educator, you've reached thousands of college students, young adults, and adult learners. Mazal Tov. Rabbi Alana Zayman, as the first woman rabbi in 6 generations of rabbis, as a chaplain, and as an author, you have served communities in New York, Washington State, and Canada. You have spoken in synagogues throughout North America, bridging generations and encouraging people to deepen, heal, and uplift their relationships. When tradition has been reluctant to welcome you, your open heart has led the way. Mazal Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi Nevins and Rabbi Andelman, for serving as the sponsors of today's honorees. To our honorees, you are the guardians of our Jewish communities. You have helped forge authentic, modern Jewish community, solidly based on the 3 pillars of Torah, Avodah, and Gmilut Chasadim. In bestowing these degrees, JTS acknowledges its debt to you, who were at once its students, its partners, and its emissaries. Our community could not flourish without the dedication and leadership that you epitomize. May you continue to find blessing in your endeavors and enjoy good health. May you accept this tribute as a challenge to continue with vigor and insight the work you have done with such success. In recognition of your continued devotion to your sacred task, the Board of Trustees of the Jewish Theological Seminary has voted to confer upon you these honorary doctorates. Therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in the JTS Board of Trustees by the State of New York, it is now my great privilege to admit you to the degree of Doctor of Divinity honoris causa. Mazel Tov. While we honor these distinguished rabbis, we also honor today their families who have sustained them, nourished them, and at times made great sacrifice for them. To all the family members joining us today, we honor you as we honor them, and we thank you for your role in helping them achieve this day. Congratulations to all of you.
Before graduating JTS, one of our classmates commissioned a beautiful piece of Jewish art to which each member of the class contributed a verse. Knowing my weakness for philosophy, I submitted the verse, Lech Red, referring to God's call to Moses to go down from the mountain after the golden calf was built. What actually appeared on the art piece was Lech Lecha, God's call to go forth. Somehow Lech Lecha took root in our family. Before my first son made Aliyah, he called to ask me what I thought about his proposed email to JTS in Colombia. Quote, I will not be able to accept your generous offer as I am fulfilling my covenantal responsibility to the Jewish people. I said it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense at Colombia, to which he replied, don't worry, Abba, I already sent it. When the LL agent asked him why he was making Aliyah, I was prepared for an esoteric response. Instead, he paused and said, Ze Bayit Shali, it is my home. During my second year of rabbinical school at the UJ, I had the joy of interning with Rabbi Harold Schulweis Zal. I remember his explaining how students at the seminary were text obsessed. At the time, I had no clue what he was talking about. After all, as a student at the UJ and the seminary, being text obsessed seemed like one of the greatest compliments imaginable. To this day, I am grateful to my rabbinical school teachers and classmates for nurturing text obsession. As a rabbi educator and community builder, I have come to appreciate Rabbi Schulweis's challenge to text obsession. Rabbi David Hartman was fond of quoting Rashi on Lech Lecha, Lo natati lecha gedulatcha, ela bishvilam. On Sinai, God says to God's text-obsessed servant Moshe, a line worth framing on one's desk. Get down. I only gave you your stature for their sake. In educational language, teaching is more about what the learner learns than what the teacher teaches. Lech Red is an imperative. Love your students more than your subject matter. And love your students by insisting on the integrity of the subject matter. During rabbinical school, my classmates engaged with me in building grassroots Jewish communities. They enabled me to leave school with a palpable vision of what Jewish community could become. As my teacher and friend Michael Berenbaum taught me, our challenge is expanding Jewish covenantal responsibility by educating Jews to grow from being consumers of Judaism to producers of Judaism. That, and in the spirit of Lech Red, to say about our Jewish community, Ze Bayit Shali, this is my home.
Chancellor Schwartz, JTS leadership, dear family and friends, beloved Temple Israel of Great Neck community, my dear colleagues, and all of the people who are here today to celebrate with you. To paraphrase the great Stephen Sondheim song, we're still here. One of the odd, unexpected outcomes of this horrific pandemic is that it has enabled me to understand the beginning of the Zohar more clearly. Who would have imagined? The Zohar begins with a brilliant metaphor of a dot in God's mind that expands mysteriously, majestically, to extend into the entirety of creation. Almei Almaya, worlds upon worlds. So here I am, looking at a dot on my electronic device and trying to make eye contact with this dot. But I know that behind this dot are all of you, my dear colleagues, with your senses of humor and your extraordinary accomplishments, and all of the people that have supported all of us. Worlds upon worlds behind each dot. We may engage our communities through sermons, classes, advocacy, teaching, social media. People see what we produce. They see the dots. But we know that behind each dot are worlds upon worlds. What we did to prepare, what we thought we should have done differently, how we respond moving forward. We teach a student, we counsel someone, we stand with a couple under the chuppah, we stand with mourners at the graveside, and we know that behind each person are infinite worlds. No one gets rabbis like other rabbis. We understand the navigation, the uncertainty at times, the interplay between self and role, the complexities of being a symbolic exemplar. We understand all of this in ways that others don't, no matter how well-meaning they are. We also understand better than anyone the exquisite joy and uplift that comes from connecting with other people as rabbis. We are given a glimpse into worlds upon worlds, and it is a privilege. Looking at this tiny dot, I'm thinking of all of you, my dear colleagues, your extraordinary accomplishments, the ways that you have lifted up individual souls and also lifted up Tiferet Israel, the glory of our people. And so, on this day of celebration, I want to give thanks to Yah Ribon Almei Almaya, to the ruler of worlds upon worlds, for the many blessings that make our holy work possible. To my colleagues and to all who are celebrating today, Mazel Tov.
Shalom. On behalf of my colleagues, I wish to thank everyone who has worked with us along the journey to reach this day, family, friends, teachers, and all the institutions of the conservative movement. The honor we are receiving today is an invitation, a chance to glimpse back to who we were when we chose this path, and to rediscover our raison d'être for becoming rabbis. It's an opportunity to accept who we have become, what we have achieved, and what gives us the strength to continue serving and to reflect on the presence of the Shekhinah in our life. It's a moment to look ahead and to see what dreams we still have to fulfill and where we wish to make our marks on the world in the next chapter. Throughout my rabbinate, I have strived to bring a more relevant, accepting and engaging Judaism to Israeli society and to advance women's leadership within Judaism. In the last decade, I have focused on bringing spirituality into healthcare as the founder of Kashuvot and teacher of the next generation of spiritual caregivers in Israel. Masechet Brachot ends with a saying of Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Hanina. Torah scholars increase peace in the world, as it is said in Isaiah, and all your children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. Do not read your children banaich, but rather your builders, bonaich. תלמידי חכמים מרבים שלום בעולם, שנאמר, וכל בנייך לימודי אדוני, ורב שלום בנייך. אל תקרא בנייך, אלא בונייך. We see our teaching is intertwined with building, and our Torah scholars are responsible for creating new realities. When I look at the rabbis, and now doctors too, here today, and see not only Talmidei Chachamim, but builders as well. Builders who build with their own hands and empower others to join them. Our specialty is bridges of all kinds, bridges between ancient and modern, religious and secular, Israel and diaspora, or Jewish heritage and the cultures around us, bridges between individuals and community, between material needs and spiritual aspirations. Like real builders, sometimes we need to begin by breaking things, like the glass ceiling. The main difference between us and real builders is that wherever our career takes us, our work of building is never complete. But we can look back with pride and humility on the people whose lives we have changed and the ways we have brought healing and peace to the world. In these difficult days of uncertainty and of fear, Abraham Joshua Heschel's words resonate. Know that every deed counts, that every word is power. Above all, remember that you must build your life as if it were a work of art. May it be God's will, that we continue to do our holy work and find the energy to care for ourselves and each other along the way. Adonai oz לעמו ייתן, Adonai יברך את עמו בשלום.
Thank you, Rabbi Bernat Kunin, Rabbi Stecker, and Rabbi Stessen, for your very moving words, and Mazal Tov on the honor you received today. Taking a slight liberty with the biblical text, later tradition asserted that Abraham and Sarah were inspiring makers of souls, even before they left their home in Haran. It takes the faith and the tenacity and the courage of our first patriarch and matriarch to fashion souls. And you have all done that in your various home communities for a quarter century or more. JTS is proud to express its gratitude and admiration to each of you for that sacred work of bringing the Torah from heaven down to earth. As Boaz said to Ruth, may God repay you for your labors, and we pray that your reward will be that you always touch and be touched by the heaven that is in the Torah. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and protect you. May God bring an abundance of light and grace into your lives. And may God be kind to you and give you peace and wholeness. Amen.